So we are in Unit 8, Lesson 1 here. We are going to be kind of talking about standard form of a quadratic equation. I'll explain a little bit more about what a quadratic equation actually is today, and we'll kind of review how to find the different things that we need to find with these equations. All right. So just to kind of review with you guys, and I know you have followed along with another teacher in a lesson about this, but I just want to make sure that we have a good understanding before we jump sort of headfirst into this unit. All right. So the standard form of a quadratic equation is going to be y equals ax squared. And this a right here, you guys, just represents a number, right? So it could be any number. It could be a 2. It could be a 1, right? It could be a lot of different things. Plus bx. Okay, so again, this b just represents a number. Really, what I want you guys to see here, and good segue, plus c right there. What I want you guys to really notice is that you have x squared, x, and then no x, right? So that's sort of the form that you're always going to see with these different equations. And you guys, up to this point, we've done a lot of linear equations, right? Linear equations are just straight lines, right? As we're graphing, usually it's in the y equals mx plus b form. You guys, when we're doing quadratics, what you're going to be seeing are what we call parabolas. So you've got graphs that have a curve in them, okay? So that's sort of just a basic parabola, but we're going to be doing a lot with those in the next couple of days. All right. So I guess I kind of jumped ahead of myself, but when graphed, you guys, a quadratic equation creates a U-shaped curve called a parabola. Okay. So the thing that causes these parabolas to be actually made is this x squared, right? If we're talking about a regular line over here, we've got y equals mx plus b, right? That's just the standard form of a line, slope-intercept form. Um, but the thing is you guys, there's no squared in that equation, right? You just got y equals mx plus b. The thing that makes these graphs actually have a curve is this squared right there. Okay. So that's where we get these curves from, is the fact that it has a square to it. And we'll kind of, as we work on graphing those tomorrow, you'll kind of see where that squared comes in. All right. So again, when we graph these things, we get what is called a parabola. You guys, when it comes to these right here, I'm just going to show you the sketch of them. We can do this unit without a graphing calculator. So in this case, I'll teach you how to graph something like this tomorrow with just a regular calculator. But for now, this parabola is going to be sort of down here. It's going to look something like this. All right. Really, what I'm trying to emphasize right here is that this is our vertex, right? We'll talk about, yep. So the -5, you guys will learn in a few days. That's what actually brings it down on the graph. Okay. So again, we'll talk a little bit more about that. But for now, this is kind of what your graph should look like for this one. And what I'm emphasizing today is that you have a vertex, right? That's part of your parabola. That's where the curve actually happens. That's what the vertex is. Okay. We have something called the axis of symmetry. You guys, if you take a look at these parabolas, hopefully you notice both sides are symmetrical, right? They both go up at the same rate, right? It's not one goes kind of this way and one goes like this, right? They both go up at the same rate on both sides. Okay. So this dotted line we put down the middle would be our axis of symmetry. Okay. Um, when we look over here, you guys, to this graph, the one thing that you should notice, and we'll be talking about this a little bit more, is that you have a negative out front. Okay. We'll talk about this in a couple days, but what this is going to do, this negative causes your parabola to be flipped upside down. Okay. And you guys, what I want you to notice with this parabola is that it opens up at sort of that same rate as the first one does, right? This one sort of opens up and you see it's kind of like an exponential growth. We see that this one, same thing. The only difference is that it's flipped upside down. Okay. So again, here's our vertex. That's where the curve begins. And then we have our dotted line, the axis of symmetry. That's where it's the same on both sides. Okay. So hopefully that gives you a little bit more context into just the parabola in general. All right. So you guys, we kind of already mentioned this, but if A, you guys over here, again, even if nothing is in front of your X, that's just a 1, right? So if A is positive, yep. If A is positive, it opens up on your graph. Exactly. And if your A is a negative, that means your parabola opens down. Okay. So again, we'll be kind of like reinforcing this idea in a couple lessons from now. But again, positive A value opens up, negative A value opens down. Okay. So I've mentioned a few terms to you guys already. We've talked about axis of symmetry and vertex, but we should give sort of a definition to these as well. All right. So our axis of symmetry, again, is a vertical line, as you guys kind of saw. It's a vertical line that divides the parabola into two equal parts. Okay. So now that we have that definition down, I'm sure you guys can kind of see that up on your graph, is that this axis of symmetry that goes right through the vertex, right through the middle there, it opens or it splits our parabola into two equal parts, right? This part right here is equal to this part. They both open up at the same rate. If you kind of put your hand on it, you'll see that they're the same on both sides, just kind of inverses of each other, right? So again, axis of symmetry, vertical line that divides our parabola into two equal parts. And our equation or our formula to actually solve what that axis is going to be x equals negative b over 2a. All right. Where we get that b and the a from is going to be our standard form of the equation, right? So if we take a look up here, you guys, our a value is what comes in front of the x squared, right? So for this problem right here, our a equals positive 1, right? And our b equals 2, right? So 1, or your a value is what comes in front of your x squared, and your b is what comes in front of your x. It's going to be that middle number, okay? So that's where we get our a and our b when it comes to this formula. And you guys, what we're solving for here, when we find this x value, when we find our axis of symmetry, is we're trying to find out where on the x-axis does this line go vertically down through the vertex. Okay, so the vertex, you guys, if you take a look here, this is an xy coordinate, right? It's probably -1, maybe down 5, right? That's an xy pair. The axis of symmetry is just saying, hey, where is our x value for that vertex? Okay, so we'll be using our axis of symmetry to help us find our vertex. All right, and that brings us on to actually defining what the vertex is. I've kind of already said this a few times, but it is the turning point of the parabola. Okay, so again, our vertex is where our parabola is going to start curving, right? If you look all the way to the left of your parabola, it's usually it's moving down, right? And then it hits the vertex and it starts going up, right? That's the point. The vertex is where it changes from going in one direction to another direction. Okay. Again, it's sort of that turning point or where the curve begins on a parabola. Okay. So you guys, if the vertex is at the lowest point on the graph, it's a minimum, right? And if it's at the highest point, it would be a maximum exactly. So you guys, what a minimum would look like is your turning point or your vertex being at the very bottom of your parabola, right? So again, minimum, you've got the vertex at the very bottom, and a maximum, it's going to be one of those negative a values, right? Your parabola opens downward, so that means your maximum has to be at the very top of your parabola. Okay, so just to kind of reinforce that, you guys, which one of these has a minimum and which one has a maximum? So minimum's right here, right? So this would be a vertex that's a minimum value. Yep, exactly. So our maximum for our vertex is always going to be an equation that has a negative out front. And our minimum for the vertex is always going to be an equation that has a positive. All right. Um, I'm never going to like directly ask you to like reiterate that information to me, but it'll just be helpful when you see the graph. You'll be like, oh, like whenever I have a minimum vertex, my equation is always positive. Okay. So just good connections to be making as we're kind of going through these problems. It'll help the math make more sense as we kind of move through this unit. Okay. So now we're going to take a look at some examples of how to kind of work through just solving or figuring out what these different things are. Okay. So it says find the axis of symmetry, the vertex, and then sketch each parabola. When we're thinking about our sketches, we're not going to worry too much about like the exact points on them. I just kind of want the shape for today. We'll talk about the exact points tomorrow, okay? Or in a couple days from now. So let's see here. The axis of symmetry, you guys, before you kind of work through any of these problems, it's good to kind of say what your A and B are so that you can know what to use to kind of solve for these, okay? So we know our axis of symmetry. To find it, we need to take negative B over 2A. So let's say what our A and B values are. You guys taking a look over here, what's our A value for this first example right here? Bless you. Yep. So we have a positive 1 in front of our x squared, right? And then what is our B value? What's that middle number, guys? Yes, it's a positive 8. So again, it's good to just kind of take the time to write down what your A and B are so that you can plug it into the equation and have no problems there. All right. So to find our axis of symmetry, we're going to take negative B. So if we have positive 8, that's going to make it a negative 8. And on the bottom, we're going to take 2 times our A value. In this case, we have 1 as our A value. So to simplify this, we're going to get negative 8 over 2. And we can simplify that even further. We're going to get negative 4 as our axis of symmetry. Okay. So again, what we're saying is when we're graphing our parabola, it's going to be negative 4 on our graph, right? Because our x value is negative 4. X equals negative 4, right? That's our axis of symmetry, what we're looking for. So to find the actual vertex, you guys, to find the actual vertex of to find our actual vertex of this problem, what we're going to do. 1 second. All right, so you guys, to find the y here, if you guys take a look here, we have y equals our equation, right? So if we just plug in our x for all the x's, that's going to leave us with what y equals, okay? So what we can do here, we can take our equation. There you go. Sorry. We can take our equation that they give us, x squared plus 8x plus 15. I'm just going to rewrite it over here first, and then we'll plug stuff in. Okay. We just said that our x equals negative 4. So what we can do is we can just plug in negative 4 for all of our x values. Okay. So again, all I did there was take the negative 4 that I found, and I plugged it in for all of my x's. Okay. You guys, just the one thing I want to encourage you on is just to make sure that you're getting your signs correct, right? So whenever you plug in your x, just put parentheses around it just to double check that you're squaring everything that needs to be squared or multiplying everything that needs to be multiplied. All right. So negative 4 squared gives us what, you guys? positive 16, right? Because a negative times a negative gives us a positive. 8 times negative 4 gives us what? Yep, negative 32. And then we can just add 15 to that. Okay. So you guys, once you've kind of simplified it, it makes it really easy to work through a problem like this. All we would need to do, 16 minus 32 plus 15. That's going to give us negative 1 as our y value. So what we would do for our vertex, our x is negative 4, our y is negative 1. Okay. So again, like I was saying earlier, finding your axis of symmetry, finding your x value, helps us find our y value, and it gives us our vertex, which is an ordered pair, right? So let's do a quick sketch here. Let's say this is our graph, right? Here's my y-axis, here's my x-axis. This axis of symmetry tells me that the x value is at negative 4. So that means I'm going to go over 1, 2, 3, 4 on my x-axis. And I know that my y is at negative 1. So I know that my axis of symmetry is right here. And my point is right there at negative 4, comma 1. Okay. Again, for today, don't worry about where those other points are. We'll talk about that tomorrow in the next couple of days. But just know that your parabola generally looks kind of like that. Okay. So just kind of show your sketch. Again, you have a positive a value, so that means you're going to be opening up, right? Again, just kind of look for those different things. And we know our vertex is at negative 4, negative 1. So that's our little sketch there. Okay. So you guys, I'd like to work through just a couple more problems just to maybe look at some that are negative or some that have a number out front, right? Yeah. We'll do 7. I also want to do 3 and let's see, number 5. Okay. So you guys, we're going to do 3, 5, and 7 as well. And just a reminder, if you've already done the homework from that other packet, I would like to see you guys work through all of these on the notes as well. So if you guys feel good, you can just work through, yep, number or page 2. If you are going to be doing the homework because you haven't done it yet, just follow along with me on problems 3, 5, and 7. Okay. So if we take a look at number 3 here, you guys, again, the best way to kind of go through this is to write out our A and B values. So what's our A? If we take a look at this standard form. Nope. So our A value is going to be what's in front of our x squared, right? So A is going to be 3. Yep. And then our B value is going to be that middle term. It's going to be a negative 12. Okay. So just to kind of rewrite our axis of symmetry equation, we've got negative B over 2A. You guys, if we have a negative 12 as our B and we're putting in a negative B, what are we going to put on the top there? Yep, we're going to put in a positive 12, right? So again, just be careful of that. I'll kind of write it out just to show you guys, but if you have negative B and your B is a negative 12, these are just going to become positive, right? And then on the bottom, we have 2 times our A, which is 3. So what we're going to get is positive 12 over 6, and that's going to simplify down to 2. Okay? So our axis of symmetry is going to be 2. All right. To figure out what our vertex is, you guys, we're going to just be using this equation, right? And plugging in 2 for each of our x's. All right, so I'm going to rewrite it over here, and then we'll work through it. Okay. So again, I'm going to plug in my 2 that I got for my x into each of these x spots. So 3 times 2 squared minus 12 times 2 plus 5. All right. Again, order of operations, you guys, make sure that you're only squaring your 2. Make sure you don't multiply these and then square it, right? So 2 squared is 4, right? And then 3 times 4 is 12. Okay. I'm going to bring this down. 12 times 2 is going to be that negative 24 because we have a minus sign there. And plus 5. Okay. So if we take 12 minus 24 plus 5, that's going to leave us with a y value of negative 7. Okay. All I did was combine those things together, right? 12 minus 24 plus 5 gives me negative 7. So my vertex is going to be 2. The axis of symmetry and your x value on your vertex are always going to be the same. So we've got a 2 here and a 2 for our x value. So 2 comma negative 7. All right. If we take a look over here, this is where we can write our or draw out our sketch. Okay, so here is my y-axis, here's my x-axis. We know that our vertex is at 2, negative 7. So I'm just going to mark out a little bit here. So that's our 2, and then we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So down here is roughly 1 second. So there's our vertex down there at 2, negative 7, right? And then again, since we have a positive a value, right? The 3 is positive. That means our parabola is going to be opening upwards. Okay. So again, you guys today, they're just kind of quick sketches, right? I'm not worried so much about really any point other than the vertex. Okay, so just kind of do a quick sketch there. If you have a negative equation, which is the one that we're going to do next, we're going to do number 5. Make sure that that sketch opens downward. Okay. Do you guys have any questions before we move on? All right. And again, I know that you guys have kind of worked through this lesson already, so I'm hoping that this is good review, and hopefully it's given a little bit more context into what we do. Okay. If we take a look at number 5 now, again, let's start by saying what our A and our B values are. You guys, what's our A going to be for this one right here? Yep, we have negative 1 as our A value, right? That's whatever's in front of our x squared. So we've got negative x squared. That's really saying negative 1 x squared, right? Let's make sure we're paying attention. Thank you. Our B value here, we've got a negative 4, right? And now we can solve by using this equation for our axis of symmetry. Okay. So just to kind of plug this in here, we've got negative. Our B value is negative 4, right? Make sure you don't just put one negative, right? They kind of cancel off. You have a negative B value, right? So a negative, negative 4. Okay. What I'm doing, you guys, whenever you plug in your values, just put parentheses around them, okay? So if we have negative B, I have negative, my B is negative 4, right? Make sure the whole thing goes in there. And then on the bottom, we have 2 times negative 1. So if we simplified this, we would have positive 4 over negative 2, which is going to give us negative 2 as our axis of symmetry. Okay. All right. And then to find our y value, I'm just going to rewrite the equation it gave us. And we are going to plug in our negative 2 for all of those x values. okay? And again, you guys just be very careful of your signs because we're going to have signs that are squared and signs that are plugged in. So just be careful of that. So to find our y value, what we're going to do here, we're going to plug in our -2 in for our x. All right. This is where we have to be careful because we've got negative x squared, right? So we're going to pull down this negative, right? Just to kind of show you step by step. We're going to pull down that negative. And then in for our x, we're going to put -2 because that's what we got, right? So that's where this negative comes in. And then we've got our -2 over here for our x. And then we can just simplify and solve for our y value, okay? You guys, what's -2 squared? What does it give us? Positive, right? So -2 squared gives us a +4, but you guys, we have a negative out front as well, right? So even though this gives us +4, we need to bring down this negative on the outside. So we're going to be left with -4. -4 times -2 gives us +8. And then we've got -2 at the end that we can bring down. Yeah. So -4 plus 8 minus 2 is going to give us a y value of +2, right? So now that we have our x and our y, we can find our vertex, right? So -2, 2. And then we can do our sketch real quick over here. Got my y-axis, my x-axis. My vertex is -2, +2. So we go over here. So left 2, right, for my x, and then up 2 for my y. And again, my axis of symmetry is going to be wherever my x value is, right? And you guys this is what I want you guys to be careful of. If you got a negative, it's opening down, right? So make sure you're not drawing your sketch upward. Make sure your parabola goes down because it's got a negative x value. Okay. All right. And then we're going to look at one more problem here, number 7. Okay. The one thing that we see that's a little bit different here is that there's no c value, right? But we know that to find our axis of symmetry and our y value, we don't really need the c, right, at the end. So really all it's going to do is just make our work a little bit easier without that c value to worry about. Okay. So our a and our b, we can start with that. Our a is -1. Our b is +4. To find our axis of symmetry, we're going to use this equation, -b over 2a. So we've got 4 for our b. So we've got -4 over 2 times -1. And to simplify this, got -4 over -2, which simplifies down to +2. Okay. So x equals +2 for our x value. And then to find our vertex, we're just going to be using this equation. I'm just going to rewrite it over here for us, okay? So y equals -x squared plus 4x. All right. So we're going to use that equation. We're going to plug our 2 in that we found, right? That's what our x value is. And that'll help us find our y. And again, without the c value, it just becomes a little bit easier. You don't need to really worry about whatever that C value usually was. Okay. It's possible, but you shouldn't, I wouldn't think on this worksheet. Yeah, we can talk about that. Yeah. So you guys, 2 squared gives us 4, but you have to remember that there's a negative out front, so that negative stays there. And sorry, this is supposed to be a plus sign. 4 times 2 gives us 8. So -4 plus 8 gives us +4. So our vertex is going to be at 2, 4. Okay. And then we can do our quick sketch. You guys, as I'm kind of setting this up, is our parabola going to open up or down for number 7? It's going to go down, right? Because you've got a negative value at the very beginning, right? If you've got a -a, it's going to go down. All right.
It's miles.
Oh.
All right, guys, let's stay focused. Shh. Trying to record here. Thank you. So, not right now, CJ. Okay. So, you guys, we are going to go over 2 for our x's, right? Because we found x is 2. We're going to go up 4 for our y. And then again, you guys, we are opening downward because we've got a -a value. Okay. For number 8, you guys, I'm not going to work through it, but what do you guys notice? Like what values do we have here? Like what variables? You have A and what else? You have A and C, right? Because your A is whatever is attached. Your A is always attached to the x squared. Your B is always attached to an x, and your C is just a number by itself, right? So, you guys, what do you think your B value is going to be in this case? Yes. Your B value will be 0. And if you plug that into the equation, CJ, you should hopefully get something that's not a decimal. If you want to try that one out again. All right. So you guys, the homework, if you did not get that done on the other packet the last time you guys kind of worked through that, it's going to be sort of front and back on this page. There's 15 problems. So pages 3 and 4, numbers 1 through 15. All right.